So, you talk about kind of manage your own attention. That's your intentional use of time. Delegate effectively and intentionally, not just jump in and do it. Intentional use of time. Support high performance, which means you've got to make time to sit down and talk to folks and have those conversations. And then create that plan and monitor that. Hopefully I captured all those pretty accurately. So it's all just, you've got to put it on the calendar. And also, before you jump in and say yes to something, really ask yourself, should I be doing this? Or often what I would say to folks is, not I'm trying to be rude when I say this, but I say you want to really honor your hourly rate. You don't want to be the most expensive light bulb changer. That's not a good use of time. I mean, if there's someone else that's really what they're paid to do, you should let them do their job, because there's some things you're paid to do that actually only you can do. So you really want to do those first and not get sucked into doing, other folks' jobs where you become really, really expensive. I tell you a quick story, and then I've got another question for you. I had a client of mine several years ago, and I was trying to get him to shift from kind of away from doing PowerPoints. PowerPoints was a big thing for him. He was doing them. He liked doing his PowerPoints, but he just couldn't get away from doing his own PowerPoints. And he would stay up to 2 a.m. doing his own PowerPoints. And he was ended up becoming a pretty senior leader. And 2 things became true. First, he was the highest paid graphic designer in Atlanta, given his rate. And second, he was the worst graphic designer in Atlanta. So you never want to be the highest paid and the worst. But anyway, coming down to these ideas of managing time, is there an entry point into that? I mean, you did start off with manage your own attention, but is there a way we get a handle on our time that can start to move us down this path of becoming the self-evolved leader?
There is, and I'll share it with you in just a minute. I do want to call out one thing, that it is time, and time is the conduit, but it's also energy and headspace. And if we don't have the time, it's very hard to find ourselves with the right energy and in the right headspace to think creatively, to think about the long term. And we're just constantly it's just like you wake up every day and you're standing in front of a tennis ball machine that's just firing tennis balls at you. You don't actually get to work on any of your swings or your full game. Your only job is to knock the tennis balls back over the net, whatever way that you can. So time, and either through that or with that energy and headspace, but intentionality is the big one for sure. Now, how do we get to that point where we're able to do that? 2 things. Number 1, you've actually got to go through an exercise where you rebuild or redefine, or for the first time, define the overarching vision of where you want your team to go. What's the world that your team is trying to create for themselves, for the folks in the organization who they serve, or if they have a direct client-facing role, for the customers that they serve. And here's the reason why. If you think about the horizon level that an overarching vision has, it's the only counterpoint, or it's the biggest counterpoint from a gravitational perspective, from the day-to-day runway level actions and tactics. If you're sucked in there, you need something to counterweight you, to pull you out, and setting a shared vision is a really helpful way to get there. The second thing is most teams don't have one. They just rely on whatever the overarching vision of the organization is, which that often is a big leap. It's sort of like, I'm not quite sure how what I do adds up to that. So setting an intermediate gap is really helpful. Building it with your team is even more helpful, because then they're bought into it. It's actually one of the first bits of seeding in of that shared accountability, so that if your team creates this shared vision with you, when it comes to setting goals, if there's a conflict or a discussion, you just go back to the fact that they were in the room when you decided what that overarching vision and purpose of your team was. So start there. And then I'm a big believer in having pre-made buckets. And all I mean by that is just somewhere to hook things that come into your day-to-day life. The reality is, for most leaders, we have no buckets, and so we've got no way to deal with this interruption versus this interruption. We might have a series of meetings that we go into, but there's no horizon on that. There's no timeline associated with that. So it's a very non-sexy exercise to go through. But look at the vision that you've created with your team. Where do you need to be by the end of the year? What's your one overarching goal for the year? What are the 3 to 4 key projects you need to run this quarter to get closer to that? What's your monthly cadence like with your team? Actually just building those buckets so that when something comes into you, you go, oh, we can deal with that at the next monthly meeting. Oh, that's an interesting new strategic initiative we might want to pursue. Let's put that to the quarterly meeting and talk about it then, rather than just feeling like you need to come in every day and just say, well, all of this data and information came to me. Once you got some buckets and you can put things into those buckets, it actually starts to give you a little bit of time. You start to realize, okay, if I don't have to respond to everything right then and there and make it a crisis that's got to be tended to, okay, I can take a breath. Now I've got a little bit of room. Now I can figure out how to delegate a little bit more. Now I can really support my team. And it's about that drumbeat, that cadence, that rhythm. I often talk about when you jazz music, the difference between like somebody wanting to be a successful jazz musician. The core of good jazz music is a really good rhythm section, just a constant drum beat, get in there. And you can riff off the top of that, but it's not all riffs. Like if it was just all riffs, it would be noise. And we live in a world where everything's just noise. We're all soloing guitar over the top of everything rather than like, okay, just get your drum beat down, like get that rhythm of implementation down. And then you can have acts of heroism and you can have these massive, incredible feats of daring do on the top of it, but don't make it your de facto way of leading. So set the vision and build your implementation pulse. And then you can start to work on those disciplines.